Hello, welcome to the SunoikisisDC Digital Classics Spring 2025 seminar series, session 5, actually the 4th session recorded so far, working with Wikipedia. We're doing this live today on the 13th of February. Hello to everybody watching live now. Hello to everybody also watching later. Today, joining us, we've got Kate Cook from King's College London and Richard Nevell from Wikimedia UK. Do say hello in the chat if you're watching live, tell us where you're watching from, and if you've got any questions that we can answer in the discussion at the end, do put those in the chat as well. Okay, so today's session, we'll start with an overview of the Wikimedia family. We're going to talk about some specific ancient world wiki projects, including a spotlight on the WCC Wiki project. Then there'll be an introduction to how to edit Wikipedia, how to get involved in doing this yourself, and the exercise for this week. So first of all, though, why are we doing this session? Why is Wikipedia important? So Wikipedia obviously has a very wide reach. Wikipedia.org gets 4 billion or more unique visitors each year. It's the 4th most popular website by number of visits, and lots of other websites source their content from Wikipedia. So for example, when you do a Google search of like a person or a place and you get some information at the top of the Google search, that's very often sourced from Wikipedia. But Wikipedia is also sort of influential in other ways. So there's a screenshots there of a couple of studies that show that the language that's used on Wikipedia influences the way that people talk about particular fields, even when they're not citing Wikipedia directly. So the way that law and science are talked about on Wikipedia, for example, has become already influential to those fields. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Richard to talk about the Wikimedia family and give us an overview of the Wikimedia family. Great, so over to Richard.
Thank you very much. So I think it's always helpful to understand where your information is coming from. So I work for Wikimedia UK. We are a UK registered charity. We are funded in a large part by the Wikimedia Foundation in the US. The foundation keeps the website running. They do technical developments, they do fundraising, and they make sure that the lights stay on. And the role of Wikimedia UK is to support organizations in the UK with engaging with Wikimedia projects. That can be from helping students learn how to navigate the website, learn about what information's in there, to helping museums share stuff from their collections, whether that's images or just adding links back to the websites that they run. So there's this nice connection between different sources of information. And we're striving for the sum of all human knowledge in these, really it's a connection of websites. And that brings me on to my next slide. So Wikipedia is the one which you will all be familiar with, but it's really one of a network of websites. So Wikipedia was the first to be created. It's an encyclopedia, but as it grew, people were trying to add different kinds of information which didn't quite fit. So for example, Wikipedia wasn't really meant to be a dictionary, so that it ended up getting set up as a different project. There's WikiQuote, which is a collection of quotes put together in the same open source collaborative way that Wikipedia is. And then we've got Wikimedia Commons, which is open source media repository, so filled with about 100 million photographs, old maps, video files, even a handful of 3D files in there as well. And Wikidata. I'll be talking a bit more about Wikidata as well, but I'm going to start with a focus on Wikipedia. And I will have to apologize for the layout of the next slide, because I didn't appreciate that black text on a black background wouldn't work terribly well. But I can give you the headlines here. Wikipedia is a volunteer-run project. So there are about 100,000 people who take part contributing to the English Wikipedia every month. They're the ones who determine what the content is. They write the text, they decide on its rules, its norms, and basically determine what is covered in Wikipedia and what shouldn't be. Now, though I talk about Wikipedia, it's really 340 different language versions. So each of those is its own different community. English Wikipedia was started first back in 2001 and is the largest and is the most commonly read. It's also the one which has most content translated into other languages. So it's a very commonly used project. And even within the network of Wikimedia websites, it's perhaps the most embedded of all the Wikipedias. So if you're looking for a very impactful place to put information, the English Wikipedia is a great place to put it, because it can get translated into other Wikipedias, and it's reaching this audience that's already using Wikipedia as part of its nature of discovering information. So there are some principles behind how Wikipedia works. We call these the 5 pillars of Wikipedia. So the first one is that it's an encyclopedia, which means that it has a very dry and factual and to the point way of writing. We try and stay away from more elaborate and discursive writing. So it's an encyclopedia article rather than an essay. We also strive to have a neutral point of view in our content. That is very much an aim, perhaps not entirely realistic, but what it means is that when information is added to Wikipedia, it should be presented in balance to how significant that content is. So with the article on the moon landings, there's only a very small amount of information about conspiracy theories, because the overwhelming scientific consensus is that we reached the moon and the moon landings did take place. And in the entire topic of the moon landings, the conspiracy theories just aren't that important. But there is another Wikipedia page about those conspiracy theories. So it depends on the context about how the information is presented, or rather, to what level of detail. Because even that article on the moon landing conspiracy theories makes it clear that these are counterfactual. So neutral point of view doesn't mean we present two things as completely equal and it's up to the reader to decide. We follow what the reliable sources say and we present them in due weight as a result. So you could say that Wikipedia is very pro-information when it comes to, say, the moon landings. It all comes down to reliable sources and what they say. Content on Wikipedia and connected websites is free to use, which is really important because it means that it's part of how it's spread across the internet and is so widely used. And when information is added to Wikipedia, it needs to be under an open license. So when you write something for Wikipedia, when you click the Publish Changes button, it's automatically released under an open license, which is why we ask people to put things in their own words rather than copy and paste from another source, even if that other source is really well written. And the community is expected to treat everyone with respect and civility. As with all parts of the internet, it doesn't always quite work out that way, but that is the aspiration. This fifth pillar, which I've decided needs to come down, is that there are no firm rules on Wikipedia, because Wikipedians absolutely love rules and essays and so on. So I think that last pillar is a little bit outdated, but if you look these up on Wikipedia, it's still there. So I thought it might be interesting to take a look at what Wikipedia has when it comes to classics. So I looked up some of Wikipedia's featured articles. These are ones which have been through Wikipedia's internal peer review process. This is different from academic peer review in that we're not engaging experts to look over the topic and make informed decisions that way. It's very much the volunteers who are available who are going to scrutinize the content. So it's not professional peer review. It's very much based on what people's enthusiasm is. And that kind of mirrors the content as well. So that's what the FA stands for in the column near the right-hand side. This fetching shade of purple in the middle, highlighting top and high, is the importance that these articles have been assigned on Wikipedia for the subject of classics. So we can see that there are quite a few individuals mentioned in there, quite a few wars and battles. So a lot of military history coming through. And very encouragingly, the Byzantine Empire is rated as a featured article. And those are some very important topics there which are well covered. But coming back to the point of neutrality, Wikipedia's coverage isn't equal. So you're going to find that more men in the past are covered on Wikipedia than women, for example. In part, this is a result of better documentation existing for these figures. But there's also an element of the community's natural focus on particular topic areas. So it's well documented that Wikipedia has an imbalance in the number of biographies it has. Roughly 20% of its biographies on the English Wikipedia are about women. Now, what that level should be, especially when you're looking in the past, is a little bit tricky to judge, but there are definitely gaps on Wikipedia which need to be addressed. And Wikipedia is very good at military history as well, which is why we're seeing stuff like the Second Punic War and battles coming through in the featured articles. There are topics like education in ancient Rome and ancient Greece, which are listed as top importance, but aren't nearly as well developed in terms of their content on Wikipedia. And what Wikipedia does well is being able to create lists of things as well. So this is a snapshot from the Wikipedia article on list of Roman amphitheatres. And so it gives you this nice selection of information. And it's very, I would say, kind of almost old school web as well. It's not terribly interactive. It is just a table. It links off to other Wikipedia articles, but it doesn't give you many exciting ways to explore the content. There's a thumbnail of a map, but it's not really very interactive. You can click on it and see where stuff is, but you can't click on the individual sites and then find out more about them. So one thing for the future for Wikipedia might be to have more of this interactive content to explore stuff in different ways. And just going back to what Katharine said at the top here, if you're looking for a high impact place to put your information or information you're researching, Wikipedia is a really good place for it because everyone uses Wikipedia. Not just people looking up something for quick reference, it's people who are specialists and looking up particular things as well. So it's important to make sure that new stuff is there, because if Wikipedia gets stale and out of date, that can hold back your area of research as well. This is a Wikidata item. So Wikidata is a database attached to Wikipedia. And it started out as a database of things in Wikipedia, but it's expanded enormously to include a load of open data sets, including lots of information from sites like Pleiades. It's really intended for machine use rather than flesh and blood human readers. But this is an example of how a particular page is laid out. So you've got the label at the top saying what the page is. You've got an identifier, it's that Q42 in this instance. And then you've got properties such as educated at, or place of birth, or date of birth, all that kind of information. And attached to those properties, you've got individual statements telling you what those values are. And the really powerful thing is that it connects lots of different things together. So in this example, looking at the Wikidata item for San Francisco, it connects to California, the mayor, and the country as well. And this is just a very high-level schematic diagram of how it connects to some other things on Wikidata. Really rich items will have many, many connections, dozens, possibly hundreds, maybe even thousands of connections, pointing in all different directions. So you end up with a really detailed and rich network of information, which is why projects like Towards a National Collection are looking at it as a way of connecting museum collections in the UK. So this was an AHRC-funded set of projects to look at how you can connect museum catalogues together, so that if you want to look up, say, all pieces of Samian ware discovered in the UK, you don't have to go through many different catalogues. You could, in theory, do it in one place. That is the aspiration behind it. Now, what I've done here is, this is a query of all the Roman sites known in Wikidata, and it appears on a map. And I think the coverage is pretty decent, actually. There are definite particular concentrations here, like Italy, understandably, very well covered. The UK is as well, which I think might be some of the language bias that comes through in Wikipedia. But this is all the things in Wikidata which are ancient Roman structures, regardless of whether they have a Wikipedia article. I thought it might be interesting to look at how it filters down. So this is what happens when you look at things which just have an article on the English Wikipedia. And we see that suddenly it's a much more sparsely populated map. The UK appears to be the center of the Roman Empire, according to the English Wikipedia, if you look at how the articles are distributed. There's quite good coverage in the Middle East as well, and of course in Italy, but very much around central Italy by the looks of it. And I think the cluster in Eastern Europe there might be Romania. So really interesting how this starts to shake out. In part, this is because of what sources people will have easy access to. So I've got a couple more maps to show. This is for the French Wikipedia. Unsurprisingly, much better coverage of France. Similarly good coverage of Italy, but perhaps a little bit more spread out. This is the German Wikipedia. So very good coverage, especially of southern Germany, and again Romania there as well, which I think is really interesting, like how it's got this particular focus. And I think there was one more, and this is looking at the Italian Wikipedia as well. So a very strong coverage of ancient Roman sites in Italy itself, and then some other places as well, especially around boundaries and borders by the looks of it. So my concluding thought here is that Wikipedia is very good at sharing information, but it helps to be aware of what it does well and what challenges it faces. It certainly isn't neutral in terms of what it covers. Every community has a particular focus. And on that note, I will hand back to my colleagues on the call.
Great. So I think now we're going to talk about a few ancient world specific Wikipedia projects. Groups of people aim to edit particular things. And I think Kate is going to start off by talking about Wiki project Greece and Rome.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So one of the benefits of Wikipedia is that it provides a community, as Richard has just said. And those communities obviously you can edit on your own, by yourself, on your phone, whatever, but it can be nice to hook up with other people with shared interests. And many of those communities focus around a specific editing interest. So probably the biggest, or at least one of the most popular projects for doing classics editing, which is obviously our main focus today, is the Classical Greece and Rome Wiki project. So this is just an example of a project page. You can see that they've got their various kind of tabs, some information about the project on it, some indications of what they do, and some of the kind of resources and tasks and so on, which I'll talk about in a moment. So the Wiki project for Classical Greece and Rome is a large project. In that regard, it compares quite interestingly to the one we're going to be showing you in more depth a little bit later, WCC Wiki. And their aim is to make excellent articles on Classical Greece and Rome, as you might guess by the title, really. And this includes both writing new articles and improving existing articles. So some of the kind of smaller articles where someone started off a page but not necessarily given it a lot of detail, they're interested in adding some of that detail. They're obviously interested in helping edit pages that people might have started, you know, from the small level to fixing typos to the larger level of adding images or adding more resources and so on. But they also do production of a lot of new pages. And so they are absolutely the people to hook up with if you'd like to, for example, make sure that English Wikipedia doesn't suggest that England or indeed Britain is the centre of the Roman Empire. Or if you'd like to improve coverage of English Roman sites on other language Wikipedias. So the point of them is generally to kind of bring together resources and people to help this editing go better. And so they have kind of three main focuses in that regard. Firstly, they collect resources for editors. So this includes both guides, so suggested things that you can do to help you with your editing, but also they've got a really useful selection of texts and other materials for helping provide some of that evidence. Because as Richard has already said in his description of how Wikipedia works, Wikipedia articles need to be based on information that is found elsewhere, you know, sources, and ideally scholarship or other published resources. And this project gathers together an awful lot of those, giving links and kind of free access to various ways that you can back up the kind of things you're writing about on Wikipedia. They also provide a community, and I sort of started this off by saying, you know, these are about having communities, and it's good to have communities. But what that kind of shakes down to is often just a chance to talk to other editors. So, for example, there's been a recent discussion on the usefulness or indeed uselessness of fictional images of ancient individuals. You know, if we've got a real ancient individual described by various sources, but we've got a lot of much later paintings of that which are invented, should that go on Wikipedia? And this isn't something you have to decide by yourself, and indeed probably isn't something you should decide by yourself. A project like this one can provide a discussion with a whole range of different editors sharing their views and come to a consensus in terms of what is the best approach for doing that. They can also help you, you know, they invite queries, they like people to ask them for help. So if you're struggling to find resources on a particular topic, or you'd like someone to have a look at an article you've been working at or an edit you've been trying to get done, then they can do that. So, you know, all sorts of kind of useful community shared activities that you can be part of as part of this project. They also keep a list of tasks for article improvement. So if you'd like to get improving the representation of classics or of Greece and Rome on Wikipedia, but you don't really know where to start, then a tasks list is a really nice place to begin, because it will show you exactly what the priorities are, you know, which of these important articles that Richard again has highlighted is kind of most in need of improvement, or which things are maybe can wait for a little while. And that's a really nice way of kind of helping to focus efforts and make sure that everyone is sort of working together to improve the important and kind of most pressing issues, I suppose. They are, when I said they're a major project, they are both in terms of activity, but also they have a really extensive list of editors. There are a lot of people signed up to this project, which is really great. So they have a lot of people who can respond to things like queries very quickly, for example, which is a real benefit of their system. And it's really easy to join. You don't have to be a classicist in a kind of professional sense. You have to have a desire to do some classics-based editing on Wikipedia, and you can just sign straight up on their project page. And indeed, if you don't want to sign up, you can also just send them them queries using their project page as well, to start any of these discussions should you wish to. And just in terms of their results are so extensive because they are such a big project that I can't go through a lot of things, but their kind of goal of making excellent articles is really borne out. I mean, they've had, for example, 3 listings of articles in the Did You Know section of the front page in February alone, and given we're only less than a couple of weeks into February at the time of recording, that's pretty good going. That means they are producing, strong quality articles that are worthy of much wider attention across Wikipedia on a kind of consistent basis throughout the years. So they are a really great, really kind of large, prominent way of getting involved in classical editing. And just to show you, I mentioned their resources tab. This is just a kind of example of all of the extensive resources that they have collected together to help make editing on this topic a lot easier for you. So that is that project. And now I believe I'm handing back over to Richard for the next.
Yes, I think actually I'm going to jump in and talk about the wiki project archaeology first. That you can see the screenshot of the page there on the screen, and I'm going to show you around now the wiki project page. So like the wiki project Greece and Rome, the wiki project archaeology is a very, very big project. Its aim is to improve the coverage of archaeology on Wikipedia, archaeology very broadly. So it has, again, quite a big reach. Like the wiki project Greece and Rome, it keeps track of the output that's produced as part of the project, and you can see that they on the monitoring page they keep lists of articles that need attention. So things that might need things like info boxes, they have auto-generated lists of cleanup tags. So if you want to contribute to improving the coverage of archaeology on Wikipedia, they have a great list of all the things that need work, and they also keep track of things that have been featured articles, good articles, and things like that. Underneath this recognized content tag, and as you can see, it's a rather long list. It's a very big project. There's lots of very good archaeology coverage as a result of this project. They also keep resources, including resources not just as sources of information, but resources on how to create particular types of wiki pages. So there might be sort of templates and conventions for what you might, find under a page for example, an archaeology page, or what sort of info box you might use for a page to do with an ancient artifact or an ancient site. So you can find that all here. It's a community. Again, they keep a list of participants. You can add yourself to the page if you get involved, and they also have a user box which you can add to your user page to show that you're taking part in the project. One other thing that the Wiki Project Archaeology has is a particular task force. So within these bigger projects, there might be smaller projects. So they have a Women in Archaeology task force aiming to improve the coverage of female archaeologists and women-related topics in archaeology. So again, quite similar to the WCC Wiki project that we're going to talk about later. Now I'm going to hand over to Richard to talk about the IDEA project as another specific wiki project.
Yeah, the IDEA project makes use of Wikidata in a really interesting way. So if you think of Wikipedia as your written summary of a topic, it can be the equivalent to a journal article or a monograph. The way I think of Wikidata is it's the appendices at the back, it's the catalogues, it's the gazetteer, it's all the data sets which you want to interrogate behind that. Most people will be very happy with just the written summary, but if you're looking to go in depth, having access to that data is really helpful. So the IDEA project is the International Digital Jura Europos Archive, and it's using Wikidata to bring together lots of different archaeological archives. It's a bit like the approach used of the Towards a National Collection project I mentioned before. And it's making use of that linked open data approach. So there's lots of information in different archives, but there's not yet a way to search them all in one place. But that's what IDEA is building towards. It's focused specifically on the archaeological site of Dura Europos, which is a large, complicated, and very rich site. It's a great place to trial this kind of approach. And not only is it connecting a lot of different collections, but it allows it to be much more accessible. So stuff that was maybe only searchable in English before, or French, for example, is now getting labeling and descriptions in Arabic, making it much easier for people to access. And so it's gaining value as a result of that. Importantly, it's funded by the United States National Endowment for the Humanities, and it's being led by researchers from Bard College and Yale University. In fact, in the previous slide, that is, I think, the project lead, Dr. Anne Hunnell Chen, giving a presentation to a bunch of Wikipedians about the project and how linked open data is really useful for them. And the great thing as well is that when you've got stuff in Wikidata, you can start to build visualizations on that. So I showed you a couple of visualizations before, because I find maps just really easy to understand, and a really good way to start to explore information. This particular visualization is of find spots at the Dura Europos site. And unlike a static image, like in the Wikipedia article I showed previously, this is interactive. So you can click on one of those dots, you can find out what it is, and then click through to the Wikidata item for more information. And importantly, that Wikidata item will link to other things as well. It will link back to other catalogs. Now, having said that, this is just a screenshot, but in the actual thing, it's more interactive. And if the slides are shared afterwards, in the speaker notes, there's a link where you can explore the results. And for this bit, I'm going to step out of full screen mode, as I want to click on these links so you can get an idea of what the Wikidata item looks like. So this is an item for a fragment of a frieze. It's got an image there further down, tells you where it is currently, tells us what it's made of, what catalogue and collection it's in, and it links out to these places as well. So you can explore it on the Yale University's website. But the best thing as well is at the top, if I look at all entered languages, it's got an Arabic description as well. So before, this might have just been described in English. Now it's much more accessible. So it's about involving more people and opening these resources. Do we have time for one more link? I think maybe. At the same time as sharing a load of data, they've been sharing a load of images as well. So these are some of the images shared from the collections that they've been working with. So it's all about connecting things together and making these collections more accessible to the public. And at that point, I will hand back.
Great. So now Kate is going to talk in a little bit more detail about the WCC Wiki project. So a project aiming to improve the representation of women, broadly defined, doing classics, broadly defined on Wikipedia.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Katie. So we have heard already that although Wikipedia does many good things, and indeed, the whole kind of Wikimedia group of ways of collecting data and images and all sorts of things have many advantages, there are some problems, and particularly, as Richard indicated already, there are some problems in terms of who is making it onto these resources. And especially there is a bit of a gender problem. So as of the 27th of January this year, just over 20% of biographies on English Wikipedia were of women. So that's around 410,000 of 2 million biographies, which is not a fantastic number. Obviously, when we think about the past, as we've heard already, there are some reasons why things like sources and so on get harder for women's biographies. But nonetheless, this is still quite a low percentage. And indeed, it's worth saying that this percentage, this 20%, which I'm now saying is not really good enough, is actually quite a lot higher than it was in the past. In 2015, the initial numbers when this was first kind of looked at by the Women in Red project was only at 14%. And they also have noted, and kind of regular articles suggest that it's not just the case that the kind of subjects of Wikipedia, but also the people involved in Wikipedia tend to be quite male. So about a fifth of regular editors are women by kind of most judgments. Obviously, this is quite difficult to be exact on. So approximately a fifth, we'll say. So in 2015, when the Women in Red founders had a look at this, they launched the project Women in Red, and there are various other examples. You've seen already the Women in Archaeology project as well, aiming to do something about this, to improve these numbers, and to get women not only involved in editing Wikipedia, which a lot of these projects do, but also make sure that the subject matter of Wikipedia is representing women, and in these projects, particularly in their biographies. So the WCC Wiki project is one like this, inspired by and sometimes collaborating with projects such as Women in Red and indeed the Women in Archaeology project, but operating separately and aiming to improve the online representation of women and non-binary classicists, fairly broadly conceived. Sometimes we do archaeologists, for example. We're not restrictive in our approach to classicists. As long as people do something to do with the ancient world, we're often very happy to edit them. Indeed, some of the pages I've worked on have included people who took a classics module once in their career, and that's enough to say, right, well, that counts as classicists, and we're going to make sure they're kind of well represented on Wikipedia. This project was launched in 2017 under the auspices of the Women's Classical Committee UK, with whom we still operate. So many of the founding members were members and organisers of the Women's Classical Committee UK, which is a broader committee aimed at both kind of running events for and also supporting an activism for women classicists across the UK. The WCC Wiki project, although it maintains this association, is not limited to members of the Women's Classical Committee. We accept and have regular editors from across the world. In fact, we've had editors from the US and from Australia as well join in on particular projects. So anyone is welcome to join the editing. And we run online editing sessions every month. We have used in the past IRC or other chat rooms. These days we mostly use Zoom, and there is some coordination through Slack. And we also run one-off events and training sessions, workshops and so on. These tend to be, but are not always, based at universities in the UK. There have been some, again, actually there's been at least one workshop that I'm aware of hosted in America, but mostly these are kind of hosted in the UK among kind of academic communities, sometimes the Institute of Classical Studies as well, of course, in London. Generally, this project has been focused on biographies, but not exclusively. The project has also worked on key works of scholarship, either by women or on women in the ancient world as well. A recent good article included one on a particularly influential translation of Sappho. So as long as the page has sort of something to do with improving representation of either ancient women or women classicists, we've tended to be quite open to that. There's quite a lot of flexibility on the basis sense that every little improvement helps, really. And generally in the past, we've been particularly focused on women classicists of various generations. So this is sort of women who work on classics. But some of our editors and kind of some of our events have been more focused on ancient women as well. So if that's a particular area of interest, then you're absolutely able to kind of participate on that side. As I say, we're very flexible. All efforts are useful. This is a relatively small project in comparison to the ones we've spoken about so far. So both the Greece and Rome and the archaeological project are much bigger in terms of regular editors. WCC Wiki has a kind of small core, and then, as I say, very happily brings in other people, either as specific events or to just join the monthly sessions. And so I will say, as a kind of plug, that we are always looking for more editors. So if what I say over the next 10 minutes or so sounds particularly interesting to you, then please do reach out to us, because we'd love to have more editors. But even though I'm saying we're relatively small, as I'll show in a moment, we can nonetheless have quite a big impact, which I think demonstrates quite nicely the effect that editing Wikipedia can have, first of all, and also the effect that kind of being part of a community and striving towards a shared goal on Wikipedia can have, which is quite valuable. So just to show you, you've seen a few project pages. This is the WCC Wiki page, which includes, as with a lot of the project pages you've seen already, particular tasks and also results, so pages we have edited and worked on. And this includes both new pages and pages that have just been improved that existed already. And we also have various kind of resources and guides and so on. And like many projects, we also have a list of tasks and pages that are yet to be created or improved that is constantly being updated as the work keeps going, but also so does the job keep expanding. So there is always more to be done, but also plenty of celebration of our successes as well on this page. So I mentioned that this is a relatively small project, but nonetheless can have quite a big impact. I should say these stats are very helpfully provided by the wonderful Richard, who is here. So I've just stolen them and made them into pie charts. So he deserves the credit for doing the actual useful maths. But when we started in January 2017, as you can see, there were only 5% of biographies of classicists that were female, and 95% of them were male. So the numbers were even worse than the general biography stats that we started with. Now, in December 2024, I should say that for some reason the colours reversed themselves, and I don't know why that happened, but sadly we haven't made women drastically overtake men in this regard, which is what it looks like. But we have made a really sizable dent in the men's biographies there. So we are now at 81.4% of biographies are men, and 19.6% of those biographies are women classicists, which is a really substantial chunk that has been kind of improved by the efforts of this project over the last 7 years. So, you know, we are not quite yet at the 20% of biographies more generally, but we are almost there. And when you think of kind of how far behind we started in terms of classicist biographies, that is a really sizable increase in the numbers and in terms of the representation of women that is going on in the kind of classics biography sphere. So we have either created or improved 684 biographies of women classicists, which again is pretty impressive. And as I've said already, we've therefore nearly reached the general statistic of 20% for biographies of women. That's definitely our next goal, is to break that 20% barrier and catch up with biographies generally. In 2024 alone, we edited 68 pages, either editing existing pages or creating them, which is obviously more than one a week, which is pretty good going. And we have on the project already 15 good articles as well. So I would say in general, this project is interested in creating pages and making sure that the number of pages increases. We are less focused on just producing really excellent, extensive articles, but that is also desirable. So we're very proud of our kind of good articles, which have been, as Richard mentioned at the start of this, kind of chosen as good and rated as good by other members of the Wikipedia community. And those include obviously leading kind of early classicists like Grace McCurdy or Emily Penrose, but also novelists who wrote on classical subjects like Mary Reynolds or Katharine Freeman, who also produced kind of public scholarship. So there's quite a wide range of good subjects making good articles under this project. In 2022, we were really proud to be the Wikimedia UK Partnership of the Year, and this is something which I think we're probably going to be announcing at talks like this for the rest of our lives. But it demonstrates that a kind of small core of dedicated people regularly meeting and contributing a little bit can have a big impact, enough to be kind of noticeable in the wider community of Wikipedia editors, which is absolutely what we want. And, you know, we've maintained our links with the classics community as well. So you may see us at classics conferences or other kind of events. And indeed, there's been coverage in the media, including the Times Higher Education of this project, and various articles, especially as we've kind of hit anniversaries or hit particular numbers of pages created. And there's some of this coverage available in the reading list for this session, if you'd like to see more about, you know, our kind of history and our impact and so on. So why do this? Why is this, you know, worth doing? And obviously, you know, there's something to be said for improving this issue of representation. There is an ideological purpose behind this for most of us, in that we think that this is kind of an important thing to be doing, to be changing these percentages of the numbers of women classicists who are part of the Wikipedia sphere. And it's often been said one of the kind of big issues around representation of women or people of colour and so on is this phrase that comes up over and over again: you can't be what you can't see. But given the kind of huge impact that you've heard about already of Wikipedia, the way that it changes language around subjects and the way that it's often one of the first results that comes up in a Google search, if the impression that Wikipedia gives of classics is that it is a subject done entirely by men, then this is obviously not positive. So this kind of wider impression that we want to give of our field has kind of, there are good reasons for changing that and making sure that it is representative. Why do it as part of this project? Well, I mean, it's also worth saying that I have personally found, I know a lot of my kind of colleagues have found, that this is a really interesting way to understand the history of the discipline as well. So to think about how has the field of classics changed, and to kind of extend this beyond just Wikipedia into understanding what is it to do classics in the modern age, and where has that come from? So what kind of archaeologists and classicists were working in the field who many of us haven't heard of today necessarily, but who had a huge influence on kind of ideas in the field, and how their own backgrounds and so on contributed to the development of the subject. So it gives us a really nice chance to understand the discipline of classics by participating in this project. And we've had specific events that have been on, for example, Welsh classicists, when an event that was held at the Classical Association when that took place in Wales. We've had for Black History Month editathons on classicists, scholars of colour, and we've had similarly for LGBT History Month, we've had kind of focuses on LGBT classicists, and indeed their scholarship as well, which is a really nice way of exploring and highlighting all the different ways that classics can be done and all the different people it can be done by, which I think contributes to a really nice level of understanding as well as kind of public representation of the field. We're also, as I mentioned before, we sometimes associate with and connect up with other projects, and I think, you know, being part of a project like this can be really useful for then connecting with those other projects. So we and Women in Red have teamed up in the past to do specific months on particular types of women. So they've looked at classicists in the past, which has been great fun. And we've also collaborated sometimes with archaeologists as well. And it's also worth saying that, I mean, I mentioned when we talked about the Greece and Rome project, that there are advantages to being in a project because you get that community. Now, one of the things about working on biographies specifically, which is less of a kind of issue in relation to the wider classics editing or kind of editing of archaeology as well, is that when you edit for biographies of living people, which you would be doing if you were doing biographies of classicists, there are additional requirements when participating in Wikipedia editing. So you can see here, this is, in fact, this has come from one of our pages, which is why you can see Women's Classical Committee tag on here, as well as Classical Greece and Rome, and indeed Women in Red. So quite a few of the projects we've been mentioning all tagged on this. But above all of those, you've got the note about the biographies of living persons policy, which effectively, kind of understandably, requires things like not putting contentious material on, and especially libelous material on people's pages, because they won't like it, and kind of additional areas raising concern around these biographies, particularly, of course, for the subjects of these biographies, but also for other people who might kind of have disputes. And given that there are these, sensible extra precautions around editing biographies and so on, it can be very useful to have that community to have discussions with. I mentioned that was one of the benefits of some of the other projects we've looked at, but even more so if you are likely to be stepping into potentially contentious waters, it can be really valuable to have a community of other editors who are used to working in this area, who can discuss with you what the best course of action might be before you leap headlong into potentially problematic discussions or decisions of your own. There's also a kind of an issue around editing of biographies and around biographies of women of notability, which I'll discuss more in a moment. But again, because this provides extra challenges, it can be useful to have the community of a project like this working together to overcome those challenges. Now, I've got, a couple more minutes just to note notability. So as well as the living persons issue, another thing to be aware of when editing, particularly biographies, but I mean, that arises in all questions, is that on Wikipedia, articles need to be of a notable subject. We can't just put articles up on whatever we feel like. No one is interested in a page on my coffee flask specifically. That's not notable. It doesn't need to be in a worldwide encyclopedia. So judging what or who is notable is normally done by a specific policy. And there are, for academics, which is obviously for this project kind of a main focus, there are specific guidelines around rank. So professors at most places, not so much in the US, but outside of the US, professors normally are notable enough by virtue of holding that academic rank, but also academics who might have attracted specific and increased media attention might gain notability that way, or large grants or kind of other awards that are sort of more publicly decided can be ways of gaining notability. Now, notability has, however, often been challenged, especially when it comes to biographies of women, because a lot of the kind of public recognition elements of notability have been historically not awarded to women anyway. So you end up in a little bit of a catch-22 in that it is harder to prove notability for women, and these pages can therefore attract additional challenges. And one of the things, therefore, that being in a community can do is help you to think through where these biases might be arising from and if they're likely to be a problem, and help provide additional resources for tackling such challenges, which, again, is, I think, really valuable if you have decided that this is worth doing, which those of us who are involved in this project have. Then being set up in the best way possible to do it, to take on this issue of notability, to really understand what challenges might arise and what kind of resources you can use to combat those challenges is much easier done as a group than just by yourself. So the WCC Wiki project provides all of these kind of useful community features, as well as I said, having a really great impact for a project which is small in number, but very keen, very friendly, and we would love to increase our numbers just to do a bit more recruitment plugging before I hand back to my colleagues. Oh, no, I have got a slide about conflict of interest, but yes, sorry, I've messed up the timing there. Just to say, conflict of interest is also a potential problem with biographies, and we can also help you discuss those as well, particularly not editing pages about yourself or your employer is an important issue in dealing with biography editing.
Great, thank you very much, Kate. So I think now Richard is going to talk about how to edit Wikipedia and give us an introduction to that and talk about the exercise for this week that our students here in London will have to do, and you can find on the Sunoikis's page.
Yeah. So the page on GitHub gives you the full details of the exercise, but in short, what we want you to do is to create a Wikipedia account and start making some edits and get to know how Wikipedia works. Perhaps the best way of understanding how it is used to share and create knowledge is to take part in that process. Get to know how to reference information for Wikipedia, assess what kind of topics are notable. So I thought that what might be helpful is to show you how to edit. I'm going to do that in the sandbox. So that's kind of a practice space on Wikipedia. Everyone has one. You're very welcome to use yours once you create your account. Though it is kind of your own experimentation area, treat it as a public part of Wikipedia because it is viewable to everyone. Most people won't see it, but just don't put anything there that you wouldn't want public. So feel free to write notes about thoughts on Wikipedia, stuff that you're in the middle of writing about. Don't write personal information like your bank details. When you're logged in, you get some different buttons in the top right of your view on Wikipedia. The one I'm going to look for now is under this person icon, gets a drop-down menu and sandbox. And this is that experimentation area that I mentioned. It's good for practicing, and it's good for sometimes preparing new text before you take it live. You certainly don't have to do that. You can pick a Wikipedia article and edit it straight away. In fact, I recommend that once you've built up your confidence, just go and do that. That makes the process a lot quicker. And importantly, it means that speed is really useful for the readers because you can add information and the very next person to load the page that you've just improved gets that new information. A couple of things to keep in mind. When you have a brand new account, you'll have a lot of helpful bits of information pop up, explaining what different buttons do, why references are important, asking you to fill in the captcha if you're linking to another website to make sure that you're not a spam bot. That will eventually go away once your account is 3 days old and you've made 10 edits. It's just to help you initially find your way around and just to, again, check that you're not a spam bot. So here you are in the sandbox. I have two buttons at the top of the page, one labeled edit and one labeled edit source. The reason for this is there are two ways to edit Wikipedia. If you've ever used WordPress, you've got a source editor and a regular visual editor, which is much more straightforward to use and allows you to focus on the text. So I will show you the source editor just so you get an idea of what it looks like. On this page, because there's not very much of anything, it is just that small string of text that appears. You might have a pencil icon which allows you to toggle between the source editor and the visual editor. I've got this button instead, which allows me to just click edit. And here we are in the visual editor. I can just start typing here. And again, there's that pencil icon allowing me to swap between. This toolbar, it allows you to format your text. So you can create headings, you can italicize stuff, you can make stuff bold, although that's usually just for the article title, the first time it's mentioned in the text. The chain link icon allows you to link to other Wikipedia pages. The cite button, really important one, that's how you add a reference. Depending on your interface, it may be labeled cite, or it may just have those quote marks. Either way, it does the same thing. This allows you to have bullet lists and numbered lists. And then this drop-down menu insert allows you to do tables and images as well. This final button I'll show you for symbols, it's very useful if you've got stuff to include which isn't on a standard keyboard. So that can be various symbols, but especially as well accents, and you do have Greek letters as well, which might be rather handy. So nothing goes live until you click the Publish Changes button. Think of it as your save button. It's worth using it fairly regularly. Like if you've written a sentence and you'd be annoyed if you had to retype it because your browser crashed, click the Publish Changes button. You might as well save that change. Now, let's give you an idea of how the editing interface actually works. What I've got in the background here is a recent news story about the discovery of the Roman Basilica in central London. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a statement based on this story, and then add a reference to show where that information has come from, because that's an absolutely vital part of Wikipedia. If there is one thing to remember about how to edit Wikipedia, is that whenever you add new information, you need to show where it's come from. That's a service to the reader, because they want to find out more, perhaps. And it's also useful for other Wikipedia editors as well, because it means at some point they could cross-check that information, or they might want to use it in other places as well. And it can be really helpful for your future self as well. If you're writing about a topic which you might want to come back to in the future, treating it as a freely accessible notebook, you want to point to where that information has come from, especially if that information wasn't particularly easy to find in the first place. Okay, so first of all, we need a statement. Okay, so we have a nice straightforward statement. It is factual. It is not over the top. I'm not saying this is the most important discovery of the 21st century, because that would be a point of view and not especially neutral. You could include a quote from someone informed on the subject saying what the significance of this is. That's a way you can include points of view within an article. But we want to make sure the information is neutral. Okay, so I've got my statement. It's written in my own words, so we don't have to worry about copyright. But I need to add that reference. So let's click the Cite button. And we've got down here, let's see, I'll zoom out a bit. Hopefully you can see that better. And there are three options here: automatic, manual, and reuse. Kind of going backwards, but reuse is really useful when you've got a long Wikipedia page and the reference you want to use for a piece of information is already there. So rather than plugging in all the information again, you just click reuse, and that takes care of it for you. Manual gives you the option of picking which of these is most suitable. So it would be, it could be either website or news. Let's click website, and whichever you pick, you're presented with a form to fill in, and you add as much information as you reasonably can. For example, with this article, do we have an author? We do. We do have an author name, but for some news articles, you don't always get the name of the author. It might be just not included at all, or it might be something like office staff or something like that. So that's how you do it manually. That can be quite useful if you're dealing with PDFs, for example, but automatic would be my default choice because it takes care of some of the heavy lifting for you. So what I'm doing is I'm copying the web address. I'm going to paste it into the box, click the create button, has a little think, and there we go. It's got some information automatically. It's got the title of the page. It's turned it into a link so someone can follow that and find more information. It's got the name of the website. It's got the date on which it was published and the date on which I read the article itself. That's really useful for online sources because they can change over time. Information that's there now might not be later or may get modified. So it's useful for specifying at which point you consulted a source. And then you click the blue insert button and it takes care of formatting for you. So publish changes. With the edit summary, you just explain what it is you've done. And click publish changes, and has a little think, and it's now gone live. So we've got the sentence, we have the reference as a footnote. If I click on that, it takes me to the foot of the page, which in the sandbox isn't very far down, but on a longer Wikipedia page would take you to the references at the foot of the article, and highlights which reference supports the information that I was looking at. And I can click on that, and there we go. There's the news story. Okay, so that's how you add a reference on Wikipedia, perhaps the most important thing that you can do. Let's have a quick look at some of the other buttons as well. So how would you add a section title? Well, you start writing the title, you highlight the text, and from this drop-down menu here, instead of paragraph, you pick either heading or one of the other options. And it's that straightforward. I might decide that readers would find it useful if there's a link to a topic such as basilica. So I highlight that, I click the chain link icon, gives me a pop-up menu with things to choose from. And this one at the top looks the most likely. Type of building in classical and church architecture. Okay. I click on that. The text turns blue to indicate it's a link. And then I click Publish Changes. And it is that straightforward. It goes live immediately, so you don't have other Wikipedia editors cross-checking in real time. So it's not live fact-checking, but what will happen is that in very active Wikipedia articles, especially stuff with breaking news, you're more likely to find the information is scrutinized by other Wikipedia editors. So if I'm writing a Wikipedia page which is read, I don't know, 100 times a month, it's unlikely that another Wikipedia editor will check line by line what I'm adding and make sure it matches the source. But for something that's in the news, if I'm adding even just a sentence, it's likely that Wikipedia editors will check that. That's partly just because it's how Wikipedia works. Stuff that's in the news gets people's interest, and so they will check. So that's very much worth keeping in mind, especially when starting out with editing. I'd recommend focus on topics you're interested in, not necessarily stuff that's in the news, because that's where stuff will move very quickly and can perhaps get a bit contentious then. So I would very much recommend picking a quieter area of Wikipedia to start your editing journey. And that can be really rewarding as well, because if you're writing about a topic where perhaps no one's added much information in a while, you are transforming what's available online. Because of how the internet works, Wikipedia is such an important source of information, not just in Google search results, but in stuff like AI. Wikipedia is one of the training sets which is most commonly used by large language models. So it's really important the stuff that's in Wikipedia is accurate and covers a whole range of topics. And even if you're writing on something which feels very esoteric, very, very niche, there will be readers out there who still benefit from it. I wrote a Wikipedia article on an archaeologist who was active in the 1950s and 1960s. She didn't have much available information online. It was maybe a paragraph long that I was able to pull together. Even her date of birth was a little bit uncertain. I think it was third-hand information. And I created that page 2 years ago. But despite being read on average less than once per day, I got an email the other week from someone thanking me for creating that article because someone had mentioned the topic to them, mentioned this archaeologist, and they wanted to find more information. So they went to Wikipedia, and it had drawn together different strands which weren't necessarily easy to find from a quick Google search. Like, you could find the stuff, but Wikipedia makes it so much easier. So the point being, there is an audience out there. There are information seekers. If you're putting information out there, there are people who are curious and will find it on Wikipedia and will benefit as a result. I often encourage people to look at page views as a way of motivating them, knowing that they are reaching an audience in a way which social media doesn't. Social media, you have to churn out new stuff to get engagement. With Wikipedia, page views are very stable. And that's a big benefit. So you typically don't get big spikes in readership unless something's in the news. You get this background level. I think that can be a really good motivation to know that people are reading the stuff that you're writing. The other side of it is that if you're writing on a page which doesn't get many readers, that is still worthwhile, because the people who are finding the information, if it's a really niche topic, they're probably not going to have many other places they can turn to for reliable information. So whatever you're adding to Wikipedia, it is going to be useful to someone, and it will be tapping into their curiosity, and that's something worth feeding, absolutely. So on the GitHub page, there are places suggested where you can look to find topics to write about. The page points you towards collections of stub articles. These are pages on Wikipedia which are very short. They may be just a couple of sentences long. And so there's hopefully scope for adding more information there. And these stubs are sorted into particular topic areas. So there are collections of very short articles to do with classical studies. So you can hopefully find something which interests you. Because I think that when editing Wikipedia, I mean, it's absolutely going to be beneficial for the readers, but you're going to be becoming familiar with the subject. You'll be learning about it. You'll be finding sources of information and synthesizing it for a new reader. It will be something you become familiar with. So you might as well pick something that you will benefit from reading about and enjoy engaging with intellectually. So that is my introduction to how to edit Wikipedia. Every 99.9% of Wikipedia pages will have these edit buttons at the top of the page for you to be able to go in and change information directly. While your account is brand new, there will be some pages which are kind of locked to you, but that's just an anti-vandalism measure. As soon as you reach the threshold of having made 10 edits, an account that is 3 days old, those pages will typically become available for you to edit. So the most important thing is to go ahead and be bold with Wikipedia editing. give it a go.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Richard, for that introduction and for showing us all those features. Some of those things, even as a regular, Wikipedia editor myself, things that you showed us there are things that, I don't regularly use, like the symbols tool that you just reminded me of. So yeah, it's always really great to have this introduction. Just going to say that obviously Wikipedia isn't always, it's not always safe to edit Wikipedia from all locations. There may be places where Wikipedia is banned, where you might put yourself at risk by editing certain topics on Wikipedia. So if you're watching this and this applies to you, but you'd like to still have a go at editing something, contribute to some other crowdsourced project, there are obviously wikis for other things as well. So there's a digital classicist wiki, for example, and on the GitHub page, there's a link to an exercise to edit the digital classicist wiki, which is not part of Wikipedia but uses a similar structure, is crowdsourced in a similar way, where you can improve this encyclopedia, which keeps track of digital humanities and computational methods for the study of the global ancient world. Great. So if you're watching this live and you've got any questions, please do put them in the chat for us to answer. We'll keep an eye on that. Any sort of points that you want to mention? Anything that you want to you think also needs to be mentioned about how Wikipedia works?
Sorry, I'll turn my microphone on, that might work better. Just on the subject of the exercise, we've advised people to make sure that they've got an active account already. So, for example, we told our students several weeks ago, go making, hundreds of tiny, correct typos, add links, add references, these sorts of things. For the exercise we're talking about, we want you to do more than that. So don't sort of think, oh well, I've made 60 edits now. This is great. We want to see something fairly substantial. That doesn't necessarily mean you've got to have written hundreds of words of prose. I mean, Wikipedia doesn't want to see hundreds of words of prose in most cases, but do something that involves using your existing knowledge, or indeed doing research to actually enhance the information value of a page. Now that might just be a couple of sentences and a couple of references, but nevertheless it's substantial contribution to something, whether that's on a page on some aspect of classics or archaeology that you know about, or some digital methods that you know about as a result of some of the things we've talked about here in Sunoikisis, or whether that's about a woman classicist who you know about, either from having read about or being taught by or whatever. Add something substantive to the pages, and that's quite useful. And while, as Richard said, it's probably slightly healthier for all of us if we work on pages that are not controversial in the first instance. If you do find over the next few weeks that someone else has edited a page that you edited, that's an interesting experience for us to all sort of keep an eye on as well and talk about. So let's see what happens. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's a sort of positive thing to mention also about this sort of like crowdsourced work, is that, even if you do something and you do an edit badly, you try and create a citation and the reference format doesn't quite work, usually someone else will come along and fix it. There are people whose main Wikipedia editing activity is, going around and replacing broken links with updated archive links and things like that. So, things that you don't have to get it perfectly right first time necessarily, and you don't have to, do everything to, add every possible bit of content to a page and, do all of those things, because someone else will also come along and edit the page as well, which is very nice.
Absolutely. And just you editing a page can be a catalyst for someone else adding more information as well. It might prompt them to think, oh, hang on, I've been meaning to add something on this as well. It seems like a good time to do that. So it can have those benefits. And even over the long term, it's a kind of collaboration across decades by now, where you will have Wikipedia pages which are 23, 24 years old, and you're working with text because it's all kind of one document. You're working with text which was developed by sometimes hundreds of different people. And these may be people who've come and gone from Wikipedia and now are no longer writing on it, but it's this fascinating process of collaboration. So I'd say it can be sometimes a bit daunting to have someone come along and edit your prose, but it's a good thing. It's how Wikipedia works. And you yourself may find that you're editing other people's prose as well. So yeah, just go ahead and give it a go.
And I guess one could add that although Wikipedia's only been around for 25 years, there is text in Wikipedia which is well over 100 years old, because it was initially seeded, some of the pages were initially seeded with out of copyright public domain encyclopedias from the late 19th century and early 20th century. So there is prose in there which is you're collaborating with these long dead scholars. And if some of the content of a Wikipedia page looks a little bit out of date, that may be why, and that's another fantastic reason to sort of bring it up to date.
Absolutely. Yeah. We haven't got any questions in the chat yet. Do you take this last opportunity, if you're watching live, to ask us anything if you do want to. Other advice for new editors?
So let's see. We've covered. Keep in mind that you've got to include references all the time. Be neutral. Don't jump straight into contentious areas if you can avoid it. I mean, the reason they're contentious is because people are drawn to them and have very strong opinions. And as humans, we of course have strong opinions of things. So you may end up going that way. If you, hopefully you have created a Wikipedia account already. If you haven't, think about what your username would be. I use my own real name, but partly because I find it very helpful to be transparent about who I am, because of my research and my day job. But it's easier to start off anonymous and link to your real identity rather than the other way around. I see we've got a really interesting question from Sarah about translations. So how would you go about translating a page into English? There's the technical way, which is that Wikipedia has a content translation platform. You decide what the target language or the source language is. Say that you're beginning with Greek and you're translating to English, and it just gives you an interface where you've got the source language on one side and a page where you're writing the English text on the other. And it's quite straightforward. And you can publish that into your sandbox or your user space. The reason you can't publish it straight into the... Oh, brilliant. Yes, that's exactly it. You can't publish straight into the main part of Wikipedia is when it was set up, there was some low quality translations coming through with people using stuff like Google Translate as a shortcut. I mean, Google Translate has improved a lot over the years, but we still want at the very least, the text being checked by people, so is that quality control. You may need to activate your beta options. So the content translation feature is hidden under the beta option. So Katharine, on your screen in the top right, if you click on that, and then when it loads, scroll down a bit, it's the second one down, content translation. And it's a nice, pretty straightforward interface. That's the technical way of doing it. Actually, I would say that's the best way of doing it as well, because it takes care of the attribution for you. It's really important you say what you are translating from in the first place. I was going to say that the less technical way of doing it would be to just kind of have a Word document open in one screen and the Wikipedia article in the other, and translate that way, and then just paste it into Wikipedia. That's not as good because it's not going to preserve the references, and you would need to remember to say where you were translating from. So I've seen a very common activity for new editors who are multilingual is to do that translation. And they seem to take that approach where they're doing it offline and then pasting it into Wikipedia, but they're not including the attribution, which is understandable. No one's told them they need to do that, but for the copyright license, which is attribution and share alike, you need to include the attribution, which is saying, this is where I got the original text from that I translated. Yeah, and that's on screen. You'll see an example of what the content translation tool looks like when you're in the interface. It's just side by side, and then you've got the publish button at the top. You might need to mess about with the little cog next to it to tell it where to publish, as in to your sandbox or user space, but essentially that's it. And as a quick follow-up, I'm happy to answer questions about that afterwards as well, if you do experiment with it and it's just not working as expected in any way.
I would just a question out of curiosity, as someone who has occasionally translated from other language Wikipedia articles that are fuller than the English one and translated text into, and didn't know about that translation tool, so I've always done it. I didn't go via Word, I just did it directly into the edit box. Where should that attribution go? Is there a tag in Wikipedia for that? Or I tended to say in the edit summary, I translated a couple of paragraphs from the Spanish Wikipedia or something, but
the edit summary is pretty much the default for doing that. There's sometimes a second step which people like to do, which is leaving a message on the talk page as well to say it was translated in these edits from this particular version of, say, the Spanish Wikipedia article, because that may have changed since. There is a template to help with that. But essentially, as long as it's at the very least in edit summary, that satisfies the attribution. And if you do translate, one other suggestion is that you focus on the translation. You get that right first. If you then want to add text to it, treat that as a second stage, because otherwise you won't be getting the full attribution for that. When it's published, with the content translation tool, it's one edit, and usually will say it's translated from this source. If you've added new material, you're then not quite getting the credit for introducing that new information.
Absolutely, a very good point there, keeping track of the edits as well. Great, thank you so much, Sarah, for that question. We're approaching an hour and a half now, so has anybody got any final points they'd like to mention on Wikipedia?
Very small point, which is not not to sort of be a downer or to sort of discourage anyone, but it's not impossible that or it's not unheard of when someone edits something on Wikipedia, that someone else will come along and for good reasons or bad will interfere with their edits in a way that you might not like. It's hopefully for the sorts of pages we're editing, that sort of thing won't happen. But if that sort of thing happens, sort of 2 points that I would make, and others may have some things to add to that. One is it's best not to sort of engage and get into a fight with them. Like if they change something, you change it back, and they change it again and you change it back. Let's not get into that. But if something happens and you're really not happy with what's happened, talk to one of us. We might be able to sort of, you know, come up with suggestions for you know, sort of dealing with this, or you know, diplomatic ways of improving, or even just sort of explaining, you know, what it is that they were objecting to that they've therefore changed. I mean, it's you know, it's usually something that there can be a sensible solution to, but
absolutely,
it's not always fun when that happens, though. You know, you might sort of,
no. I mean, even if it is phrased well, it's not necessarily fun to see someone take a red pen to your work. So yeah, I would say don't be put off by it. It is the Wikipedia dynamic that things change. Like, even if you're really happy with what you've written, yeah, someone might think that it's perhaps just too much detail for what this article is about. So treat it as always an active discussion, potentially.
and sorry, Kate.
No, I was just going to say that feeds in really nicely to what my kind of main final tip would be, actually, about editing Wikipedia, which is treat it like a discussion. And I've emphasized all of the kind of great projects and communities you can be part of. But so do use that, you know, talk to people, use the talk pages to discuss why an edit is not working, or, you know, reach out to a project and ask for help, ask us for help. You know, this can be a really good way of working together on something. And I think you get a lot more out of editing Wikipedia, and tend to have more success in editing Wikipedia, actually, if you ask for advice and take advice, and then give advice when you're experienced enough as well. You know, do it as a group, and keep communicating, keep talking. Every page has got a talk page to help us do exactly that. And I think that can make editing Wikipedia a much more positive and straightforward experience. So do it.
Absolutely, and the point of community is a nice positive note to end on. So just going to say thank you very much again, Kate and Richard, for joining us this week and sharing your Wikipedia expertise. Thank you to everybody watching online live and watching at some point in the future as well. The Sunoikisist series will continue now in 2 weeks' time, because next week is Reading Week here in London. On the 27th of February, there'll be a session on analysing texts to continue this series. Great, so thank you very much, and hopefully see you online live in 2 weeks or at some point in the future.
Thank you very much.